Hey everybody, welcome. I wanted to share something with you today that I just realized myself, and it was quite a big realization. It's a personal situation that I'm going to share with you, but as teachers, the personal stuff is our material. It's why we've experienced it. We experience it becomes our material. It becomes the potential, and then we get the lessons from it. So obviously, this is a personal experience. I'm not handing it to you in its entirety saying this applies to you exactly like this, but I'm sharing it with you. Take from it, pull it apart, take from it what resonates, what feels right, take from it what is here for you. So a couple of days ago, I caught up with a friend and she said to me, when is this divide going to happen where are the 3D people just going to be gone? Is something, and this is, I think a lot of people have this in mind about the 21st of December. What's going to happen? Is there going to be a solar event? Is there going to be some big thing? And suddenly the whole world's going to split into 3D and 5D. And I said to her, no, from what I have heard, learnt, read, that's not how it's going to happen. We will just start to live more and more differently. Our experiences will simply be more and more different, but on the same planet. Nobody's going anywhere as such. And I shared with her how my experience throughout this time has already been so different to somebody else's, so through this whole entire year, to the level that I have been suppressed, or to the level that I have been manipulated or controlled or living in fear, is very different to some other people. So that's already an example of we're in the same place, we're sort of at the receiving end of the same experience, but we experience it differently because of our beliefs, because of our mindset, because of the energy we bring to it, because of the vibration we're in. And then this morning I realized that I actually have already lived this and have had a really profound experience of this in my own life. I just didn't realize what was happening. So the beginning of this story is that my father was very violent towards my mother. He was never violent to my brother and I, but of course we lived in a house that was filled with fear and threat. So it had a profound effect on me as well, even though he was never directly violent to me. We left that environment when I was age 7 and came here to Australia. So from the age of 7, and particularly in those first years, even though I knew that he could not physically come to Australia because it literally was a physical impossibility, because he, having a criminal record, he would not have been able to get a passport. He would not have been able to get entry into Australia. So logically I knew this, and yet I had years of nightmares where I would be in a house and I would see an open window and he would be about to climb into the window, and I'd have to run over and lock the window, and every time I turned there'd be another open window, another open door, and I would run around locking all these windows and doors to stop him from getting in. I would also, which is something that I still do to this day, check under the bed before I go to bed at night. And yet he was not physically in my life. So that's a very powerful lesson in itself, in that something does not physically have to be with us to have an effect on us, right? If it's having an effect here, if we give it power, it has power over us and doesn't even physically need to be with us. Just like when someone passes away, our issues with them don't magically go away because they've passed away. So fast forward to the age of 14 was the first time that I went back to Austria and saw him again for the first time. Now, between having left Austria at 7 and 14, we had no contact with each other. When I went back for my first visit back home at 14, we caught up with each other fairly frequently. I would think it was every day for almost 6 weeks. On the last day, I was late coming to his house to say goodbye. And he opened the door and he made a motion to hit me. He really did that quite unconsciously. There was not enough time for him to he might have thought about it beforehand while he was waiting for me, but certainly from the time he opened the door, it felt to me like it was a reflex reaction to just raise his arm and get ready to pelt me across the room. I started crying because it was just a natural reaction, knowing what he was capable of doing. That did something and he stopped. He paced, he was angry, he paced, and I if you've ever been around someone like this, kind of just ride it out until you can get out, right? That wasn't the time to leave. So that's what I did. I rode it out until I could get out. So when I left his house that day, I closed his front door and I looked at the front door and I said out loud, "You will never, ever see me again, because this does not happen in my life." And I walked away, and the next morning I flew out. So that was when I was 14. I am now 48. From my early 20s, I very regularly went back home, sometimes twice a year, sometimes once a year, but countless times that I have been to my hometown, which is where he lives, 2 streets away from where I always stay, at my auntie and uncle's house. I have never gone out of my way to not see him. If walking down his street is the most direct way to get somewhere, I walk down his street. I would visit my nana, his mum. I would visit his sister. I would go to the shops. It's a very small town. You can walk around the whole town quite easily. People would say to me, I would arrive at people's houses. I would arrive at shops. They would say, "Your dad just left. Your dad was just here." Everybody knows everybody. I would literally walk into a shop and someone would say, "Your dad was just here." So I knew he was out and about. He was out shopping, he was out visiting, he was out doing whatever, and so was I. And we have never run into each other. We have never seen each other again. And I've always found that to be profound. I've always found that to be, by the way, I've also never had a nightmare again about him. I've always found that to be profound. What I found it to be an example of is that, wow, be careful what you intend, because when we really intend something, look at the power that we have. Now, the other important thing to add in here is that I was never frightened to run into him. So I wasn't acting out of fear. I think that's important to understand here. I literally went about my life the way I wanted. I didn't change behavior. I didn't do anything differently. I literally lived my life the way I wanted to live, with the intention of, this is it for us physically. What I did also do was I continued to heal, and I continued a relationship with my father, but just on a soul level. So energetically, I continued to resolve our interaction. I just decided that there's nothing here for me to connect with physically. I can't come down to his level. I can't live in his world because it is not okay with me. And it would be going against my values. It would be going against myself, right? I can't go against myself in order to have a relationship with him physically, like in this physical world, because where he lives is not somewhere where I'm not coming down to him. So, but I've never closed the door that he can't come up to me. And that's just how I left it. What I realized today, though, is that this is more than an example of, wow, what you intend is really powerful and be careful what you intend. This is an actual example of the answer to my friend's question. So are they just going to disappear? No. We're still both going to be, everybody's still going to be in the same physical plane, but our frequencies will be so different that we will literally not be aware of each other unless we keep ourselves connected through fear. Okay, that's important to remember. However, it's maybe that day I shifted timelines. Maybe that day, in that moment when I kind of like cast that powerful intention to that door, when I spoke that out loud, what I did was shift timelines to a timeline where we did not need to meet again, where we literally don't meet up again. And today I realized that that is what will happen more and more. There'll be the people who say, I haven't encountered any police. And then there'll be the people who are beaten by them. There will be the people who will say, actually, I've found a whole heap of shops that I can go into without a mask and nobody's saying anything. And there'll be the people who go, I everywhere I go into, I get judged, I get yelled at, I'm, and in this way, we do have so much more power over our experience than what we think we do. We have to stand in our power, that's for sure. We can't have power and fear. They can't exist in the same space. But it's extraordinary, and I hope that my example, whatever you're going to take from it, whatever you need to hear out of it, whatever the lessons are for you, I hope that you really take from it the understanding that you can really shift something and you can really determine the trajectory. It's not about choosing to not have pain. I still had to do the work, right? The work didn't stop, but I was able to change my physical experience. I did not need him physically in my life to continue to be the profound teacher that he has been and that he continues to be. And I didn't need him physically in my life to continue to heal the relationship between us. But applying that to now, I think that's an example of the whole 3D, 5D thing that many of us are focusing on. 5D is, of course, you will take yourself to 5D when you shift in your consciousness. When you live in a 5D consciousness, then you will have a different experience on this planet. And you're not going anywhere and they're not going anywhere. But the way you navigate and the way you experience this life can be profoundly different from your neighbor. Possibly profoundly different from somebody that lives in the same household as you. All right. I hope that sparks in you today what it needs to spark in you to help you know how in your power you are, and to stop waiting. Stop waiting. If you want to embrace the new world, if you want to embrace what it has to offer you and the opportunities, nothing to wait for. And as I said, I want to remind you on every single one of my videos, you are not alone. You are not alone. There are many of us here, and we are growing in number every day. Much love.